There was a wedding at Cana in Galilee. That's how St. John begins this narrative. And don't you find it supremely interesting that after having said that, he doesn't tell us who's getting married. In fact, he doesn't even mention that there's a bride. He does make mention of a bridegroom, but he doesn't even have a speaking part. So, what would be the purpose of crafting this narrative about a wedding with no reference to the couple getting married? Unless there's something else going on. And your first clue that something definitely is going on is that this narrative was written by St. John. And you know that St. John has this uncanny thing of seeing everything that ordinary people see. It's not as though he has no powers of observation, but he's able to penetrate through that to see what God is up to. St. John always has a 30,000-foot view of the situation. That is why in Catholic iconography of the four evangelists, he's always represented by the eagle, because he sees things that others are not able to see. So what is going on? Well, what's going on is that we kind of pull back and we look at how the Catholic Church structures the weekend liturgies. Generally speaking, and not always perfectly to our satisfaction, but generally speaking, the first reading from the Old Testament is always going to give us an interpretive key to understanding the central point the Church wants us to understand with regards to the gospel. And what we see in the Old Testament, are a variety of promises on the part of God of establishing and entering into a new and definitive covenant. And in talking about this new and definitive covenant, he always casts it in nuptial language. And we heard that today in today's first reading from the book of the prophet Isaiah. As a young man marries a virgin, so shall your builder marry you. As a young man rejoices in his bride, so shall your God rejoice in you. And so, yes, when St. John says there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee, clearly, there was a literal wedding between a couple obviously related to the Blessed Virgin Mary, but he's not talking about that nuptial. He's talking about the revelation of the fulfillment of the promise to enter into a new and permanent covenant, precisely in the person of Jesus Christ, who in the womb of the Blessed Virgin Mary wedded his divinity to our humanity. That's the point that St. John wants us to grasp. Well, how do we know this? How do we know that that's what St. John wants to see? That's where we turn our attention to the miracle. Remember last week I told you, that among all the Catholic fun facts, there's one about Epiphany. There's 3 of them. There is the visit of the Magi to the baby Jesus, revealing his divinity in the gifts they offered him. There is Jesus' baptism at the Jordan and the Father's testimony from heaven that this is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. And then there is the miracle of changing the water into wine. And you may say, what is so remarkable about that? Well, we weren't there. But something remarkable did happen. Because his disciples had front row seats to everything that happened. And when they saw it, they believed. Because in that miracle, we are told what by St. John? He revealed his glory. That this person, Jesus Christ, is no ordinary man from Nazareth. He is, as the prophets foretold, the very marriage of God with the human race. Because we see in his humanity, bodily, physically present, Jesus Christ exercising his divine power as God. To change something he already made, water, into something completely different. Wine. Who can do that? But God alone. That's what St. John sees. That's what he wants us to see. Interestingly enough, again, we're talking about a wedding at Cana in Galilee with no mention of who's getting married, but the central figures in this narrative nonetheless are the person of Jesus Christ and his Blessed Mother. So we have to take like a super brief look, because this would be another 15-minute homily. And then Jesus' reply to Mary about they have no wine is another 15-minute homily. Trust me. I think you can on that count. What is Mary revealing about herself in today's gospel? Is that within the household of God, she is a variety of things. And among them are intercessor, advocate, mediatrix. What does she do? She observes. She observes, and when she sees a difficulty, when she sees a necessity, in her compassion, she makes it her own and brings this to her son's attention. And then after having brought it to her son's attention, she makes all the necessary arrangements that will set the stage when the Lord decides to act. Jesus Christ is sovereign in his authority. Never doubt that or mistake it. The Blessed Mother does not. The Lord uses and exercises his divine power when he wants, as he wants. Mary can simply present the necessity and make the arrangements. And when Jesus acts, the decision is his and his alone. But look at how the Blessed Mother also teaches us how to pray, teaches us how to approach our Lord. Did Mary come up to Jesus and say, "Oh, son, oh no, What a disaster. They're running out of wine. If they run out of wine, how humiliating. How embarrassing. I got an idea. I see 6 stone jars over there. Have someone fill them with water. Do an epiclesis. Pray. Change it into wine. Problem solved. Is that how Mary prays, or is that how we pray? Hey, Jesus, I'm having a difficulty, but guess what? I got great news. I figured it all out. Just do these things at this time and in this way, and everything will be great. How fearful are our prayers that we have to lay hold and grasp and try to control everything to its last detail? Where is the simplicity and confidence that we ought to demonstrate as children? They have no wine. Period. And then she walks away. How ought we to bring our necessities? I mean, we can do them in one or two ways. We can bring them to the Lord, clearly. We can bring them to the Blessed Mother, clearly. We can bring them to a patron saint, our guardian angel, clearly. It makes no difference to whom we present our prayers, to one or all, preferably. You simply state the case. I'm in trouble. Now move on. You have other things to pray about and consider. It's how someone who loves God prays. Because in their making known of their necessities, they demonstrate that level of simplicity and trust of a child. Final point. I like what the fathers of the church have to say about the miracle itself. It really is interesting how this is really the only recorded miracle of Jesus Christ where he doesn't say a word and he doesn't touch anyone or anything. This miracle is a sheer act of the will. It's quite unique in that regard. We don't know if there were others. We only know in the 4 Gospels, this is the only one. But anyway, but it got the fathers of the church kind of thinking, about the way people marvel at naturally occurring things that they ultimately take for granted, and in the process do not see the hand of God at work, who is producing miracles day after day after day right in front of our eyes. But we're so numb, so insensate. Unlike St. John, we can't penetrate and see. So what are they saying about changing the water and the wine? And they're like, well, why did Jesus have the servants fill 6 stone jars with water? Why can't he do what God can do, and it's like make wine out of nothing? Why didn't he fill the jars? Well, clearly he could have done that. But he didn't. And this is what the fathers of the church were saying. They were like, it's really interesting. This cloud comes overhead, drops down all this rain, falls in the soil. It gets soaked up in the roots of a vine, expresses itself in plump, juicy grapes that someone picks and ferments and becomes what? Wine. And we act surprised. We act surprised. when Jesus can change water into wine. That somehow, I'm not doubting this, I'm not trying to diminish it, but we act astonished, like this never happens. Well, yeah, it does. Every single day. Yeah, but we're scientific now. We know about the fermentation process, and we know how that's not what we're talking about. The processes that your scientific method have discovered were created by and put in place by the one you're trying to avoid. And you can apply this, and this is how the fathers of the church look at it, and they're like, you can kind of apply this to when Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. Everyone was stunned and astonished. I'm like, why? People come to life every single day. It's not a surprise. I mean, unless of course it's within your own family, there's great joy over the miracle of life. But people come to life every single day. But it happens so often we become numb. But when Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead, everyone is shocked. And why should that be? He was already born and lived. Which is easier to do? Create someone out of nothing like he did Adam? Or to raise someone from the dead who already once lived? So it's kind of a point of entering into the kind of vision that St. John has. To look beyond simple appearances, and see what God is doing. Because see, at the end of the day, here we are Sunday after Sunday after Sunday, and Jesus Christ changes the bread and wine he made into the sacrament of his body and blood. And it happens so frequently. Have we lost our sight? Have we lost our taste? Do we no longer recognize what God is doing behind what appears to be an ordinary human ritual that people do all the time? But nonetheless see in that the fulfillment of all these nuptial prophecies we find in the Old Testament. That yes, there is that general way in which the new covenant is expressed in the person of Jesus Christ, who wed his divinity to his humanity. But now that divinity and humanity is present to us sacramentally, so Christ can unite himself to us in the flesh. In the flesh. So that even for that very, very brief moment, we can be one. And so think about that as you come forward to receive this extraordinary miracle, this extraordinary gift. That it is born and being offered to you from the heart of Jesus Christ, your Maker, who wants to be one with you, who wants to wed himself to you, and to receive with joy the one who comes to you, rejoicing in you, as a bridegroom rejoices in his bride.